Today we have a story time of a kid who thinks a Freddy Fazbear is real, in his house, and out to get him. Yeah, I'm not even kidding. Leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who sent in this story, we're going to call him Dylan. And by the way, I got that name from the comment section, so leave a comment down below of any names you want me to use. And this story all started one night when Dylan was babysitting this kid in his neighborhood. So Dylan got to the house and, the kid's mom, and we're just going to call the kid Ben because I use Ben for every, other name. It's kind of a meme on the channel at this point. Anyways, right, so the kid, aka Ben, his mom came down, greeted him at the door because, Dylan got to the door, rang the doorbell, and, Ben's mom greeted him. And she's like, oh, thank you so much for coming. I know this is kind of on short notice, but I really, really do appreciate it. All you got to do is just, hang out with, Ben's already been fed. You don't have to give him dinner. All you got to do is just hang out with him for a couple hours. His bedtime is at 9, and afterwards, just kind of stay in the house till we get back, which is going to be around 11 or so. And I really, really do appreciate this. And Dylan's like, oh, it's no problem at all. Ben's a great kid, because this is the second or third time that Dylan has babysat for Ben. Ben's mom is friends with Dylan's mom. They're not super close, but they're friendly enough, right? So anyways, right, it's kind of like a routine babysitting gig. And sure enough, Ben's mom leaves to go do whatever she's going to go ahead and do. And it's time for Dylan to start babysitting Ben at this point. And, it's pretty normal in the very beginning. Things are kind of chilling until things start to get a little bit weird. So for some reason, I don't remember exactly what, Dylan was like, oh, want me to go get whatever? And, Ben was like, yeah, no, that sounds like a good idea. And Dylan's like, all right, well, that's probably in the basement, so I'm going to go down there. And when, Dylan says, I'm going to go down to the basement, Ben looks at him and goes, no, you can't do that. And, Dylan was really startled by this because Dylan had gone in the basement before because that's why he knew where whatever he was trying to get was. And, this had never been an issue before. And also Ben was he wasn't necessarily a quiet kid, but he wasn't known to have random outbursts for no good reason. So, Dylan was both concerned and confused. So, Dylan turned to Ben and was like, dude, what's wrong? Is everything okay? And Ben is just looking at him like, You don't understand what's down there, man. You don't know what I've seen. And at this point, right, Dylan's just kind of looking at him like, bro, what are you talking about? Is the boogeyman down there? Is a big scary monster down there? And the kid, aka Ben, is just looking at him like, you're not going to believe me, but Freddy Fazbear is down there. And at this point, right, Dylan, he knows what Five Nights at Freddy's is. If you don't know, Freddy Fazbear is one of the animatronic characters from this video game. Five Nights at Freddy's, very fun game. I used to really enjoy it as a kid. But anyways, right, Dylan was aware of what that game was. He was at least aware, and he was like, Ben, there's 0% chance that Freddy Fazbear is down there. And Ben looks at him like, dude, no, you don't understand. So Dylan kind of has a smirk on his face, and he looks at Ben and he's like, all right, you want to make a bet? I'm going to go down there, and I bet you a firm high five, right, that I will find 0 animatronics. I won't find Freddy Fazbear. I won't find Chica. I won't find any of those guys down there. I bet you a whole high five that, I'll find no one down there. And, look, obviously Dylan was just trying to calm Ben's nerves because he felt bad. Ben was 9 or something, so active imagination, if you to say the least. And Ben was looking at him all kind of scared because he was worried for Dylan, man. He was afraid he was going to go down there. It was going to be the bite of 87 all over again. He can't be having that. And so Ben's like, dude, I don't want you to risk anything. And Dylan looks at him like, Ben, I promise you, I am risking nothing by going into the basement. And so Ben looks at him, because Ben kind of wants him to check anyways. He's like, all right, man, as long as you know what the risks are. So sure enough, right, Dylan opens up, the door to the basement, turns on the lights, starts walking down there, and he's in the middle of yelling up to Ben saying, hey, Ben, I can't see anything so far. As I said, Freddy Fazbear isn't and as he's finishing that sentence, he hears a scream from Ben. Ben upstairs is like, ah! At this point, right, Dylan genuinely thinks that something like terrible has happened. So like Dylan like runs up assuming that there's like a robber or something. He's like, Ben, what's wrong? And he goes up there and no one's there. Ben is gone. So at this point, right, Dylan's kind of scared because Ben just screamed and then disappeared. And he's kind of thinking in his head, like, did someone like break into the house and like capture him? And he's thinking, no, that can't be. That's too fast. Like, I was just down here for a minute. And I mean, as soon as Ben screamed, within like 20 seconds, Dylan was like all the way upstairs and he didn't see anyone. So Dylan's like looking around. He's like, oh my God, what could have happened? And he looks at the kitchen door because like the basement was right above the kitchen. And in the kitchen, there's a door that led outside. And he turned around to the kitchen door. And sure enough, the kitchen door was wide open. He's like, shoot. So he runs out there and he's like, Ben, where are you? And so he's kind of like, he goes outside, he's looking around, and he hears another faint, ah! He's like, okay, like, shoot, Ben, are you okay, Ben? And he starts like yelling out for Ben. And Dylan is just kind of like running in the direction that he heard Ben like faintly scream. He's just like, oh my God, like he's thinking the worst right now. Dylan is legitimately thinking, all right, was he like captured? Was like, what happened? Like, why? Like, why me? I'm just like trying to babysit this kid as like a favor to like my mom's friend on like a Friday night. I'm not trying to like chase down some kind of like burglar or kidnapper or something. That's just not what I'm trying to do today. You know what I mean? I'm just not trying to do that. And anyways, right, he starts like running down the street in the direction of Ben, and he hears Ben yell again, ah, kind of very faintly in the distance. He's like, Ben, I'm coming for you. At this point, right, Dylan is basically breaking out into a full sprint. And like, thank God, like Dylan is like a track athlete, because the average person babysitting him probably would not have been able to sustain a full-on sprint for that long, or would have been able to at least catch up with, Ben at this point. And eventually, right, Miles is like running around. He's like, or not Miles, sorry, my bad. Dylan's like, oh my God, like Ben, where's Ben? Where's this kid? Where'd he go? And then eventually, right, he sees Ben. He's like, Ben. And Ben is like several like miles away from, or probably about like a mile away from the house. He's like kind of like cuddled up, kind of like crouched up, fetus position, whatever, in like some random dude's yard. He's like, Ben, what happened? And Ben was kind of just all curled up, and at this point, Dylan was like, Ben, what happened? Like, are you okay? And Ben looks up at him and he explains why he ran away. Real quick, comment Freddy down below if you made it this far into the video. I'll be trying to dish out some hearts to people who comment Freddy down below as a way to say thank you. I can't get to them all, so maybe comment Freddy 2 or 3 times if you want a better shot of getting a heart. And anyways, back to the story. Anyways, right, Ben says, through like kind of like tears and kind of choking up a little bit, he's like, I know you're not going to believe me, but I actually saw Freddy. I saw Freddy. He was in the house. He was looking right at me. I'm sorry, Dylan. Like, I had to run. And at this point, Dylan is like in his head, he's like, dude, you cannot be serious, bro. I thought you were like captured. I thought someone came for you. I thought you were in serious danger. But Dylan didn't want to be mean to this kid. He obviously looked distraught. Like, Ben was pretty clearly not pulling a prank on him, not pulling a fast one. He genuinely thought this big scary like monster animatronic was in the house after him, and he kind of felt a little bad. But he did say, Dylan was like to Ben, he's like, Ben, you can't just be doing that. Like, I legitimately thought you got kidnapped. And Ben's like, dude, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't mean for any of this, but I really saw him. So, Dylan sits there, kind of thinks about it for a second. He's like, Ben, we're going to go back to the house, and we're going to go through the entire house, you and me. We're not going to separate again. It's going to be you and me, and we're going to go through every square inch of the house, and I'm going to prove it to you that it's just in your imagination so that you can feel safe. Dylan's a good guy, right? Bro, a lot of people would be very mad. They would be mad at Ben. Like, they would just be like, I'm done with this kid. But Dylan, he's a stand-up guy. He's a good kid, right? Because he went out of his way to just, make sure that Ben was feeling safe. So, they walk back, and eventually they get back to the house. And Ben is just, like, looking at the door, like, all, like, nervous and scared or whatever. And, Dylan's like, don't worry about it, man. Come on in. And they walk into the house, and someone's actually sitting at the front table. And Dylan's like, hey, like, hello? And a guy turns around, and Dylan recognizes him as Ben's older brother. And Dylan's like, oh man, I didn't know you were going to be here. And, Ben's older brother, who's like, I'd say like, he's probably 12 at this point when, Ben is 9. Ben's older brother's like, yeah, sorry, I was upstairs playing video games earlier. Sorry I didn't come down earlier. And, Dylan was like, all right, that's fine. That's okay. Like, just know I'm here till, your parents come back and I'll be putting you to bed and, whatever, right? Ben's older brother's like, all right, like, sorry I didn't say anything earlier. Dylan didn't think much of it until, they went upstairs and Dylan saw what Ben saw. When Dylan and Ben were going around, scavenging, every square inch of the house to make sure that Freddy Fazbear wasn't actually in there, right? They eventually got to Ben and Ben's older brother's room, and they went around, and Ben was like, because they went in there, Dylan's like, all right, no one's in here, and Ben's like, check the closet, because, the monsters always hide in the closet, man. That's just, that's a simple fact we all know. So, Dylan's like, all right, fine, whatever. Dylan opens up the closet, and is taken aback because what he sees in there is like a papier-mâché Freddy Fazbear costume. At first, he jumps a little bit because it low-key looks like the real deal. And even though he knew for a fact that, Freddy Fazbear is not actually real, right? He doesn't actually exist. He jumped for a sec because that was the last thing he was expecting to see when he opened that up. He's like, geez, what's this? Whatever. He goes in and he kind of he looks in the closet and Ben's like, is there anything in there? And, Dylan's like, nope, nothing's in there. But he kind of Dylan goes in and looks at the costume and realizes that it's a costume in the closet that Ben's older brother uses. And then he realizes, and he's like, wait a minute, Ben, what did you exactly see? And Ben started to get nervous again and tear up a little bit. He's like, I saw this big Freddy. He was standing in the staircase and he was just looking at me. And at this point, Dylan was like, Dylan put 2 and 2 together and realized that Ben's older brother was playing a prank on Ben and almost got him in a lot of danger, to be honest. So, sure enough, eventually time goes by and it's time for them to it's time for Dylan to put them to bed. And they go to bed. Dylan's just kind of sitting there waiting for Ben's mom to return. And when Ben's mom returns, Dylan explains what happens and then also explains what he found in Dylan's older brother's closet. And let's just say that Dylan's older brother got quite a talking to. Subscribe if you haven't already, drop a like on the video, and then click on one of the 4 videos on screen right now to support the channel. Peace. Today we get a story of another Minecraft kid who thinks Freddy Fazbear is actually out to get him. However, this story has a bit of a twist to it, and when I received it, I knew I had to tell it, so stick around, leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who sent in this story, we're going to call him Benson. I got that name from the comment section, so leave any names you want me to use down below in the comment section. But anyways, right, this is a story of Benson and his friend George, who is the Minecraft kid, but we're just going to call him George from this point out. So this story started when Benson, the subscriber, and George, his friend, aka the Minecraft kid, who we're just going to call George, they were out and it was like a Saturday and they were just playing at their local park. They both lived in the same neighborhood and their parents allowed them to go out to the local park to, to hang out, to play with each other, whatever, having fun, right? And it was walking distance from both of their houses, and their parents kind of, they felt, I don't know, confident enough to let them go out by themselves, maybe they were mature enough, maybe the parents just thought they'll be fine or whatever. But anyways, they were free to go out and hang out whenever they wanted to, as long as they told their parents before they left. And this all happened one Saturday night. It was kind of getting dark outside, the sun was going down, and Benson and George were kind of just chilling there at the park, kind of staying a little bit later than they usually did. And this is where things started to get, where things started to go down, per se, right? So Benson and George, they were kind of just chilling. They were both sitting on the swing set, and they weren't, actively swinging that hard. They're kind of just sitting there talking about, I don't know, the next game they wanted to play or maybe a homework assignment. They were both in 3rd grade, and they went to the same school, and they had the same class. So, I don't know, man. Maybe they were talking about some assignment or something. Either way, they were kind of talking, and they heard a rustling in the forest because right next to the park is a big patch of woods. So maybe forest isn't the correct word, but there is quite a few trees, and it was essentially a forest. I don't know if technically it falls in that definition, but then again, man, that's not my major, majoring in forest studies. That was my second choice. But anyways, right? They heard a rustling coming from the forest, and they kind of assumed at first that it was like, because they looked over, right? It was getting dark. They're the only ones there. They wanted to make sure that it wasn't like a bear or maybe a deer or anything. And while a deer probably wouldn't charge them, they just wanted to see what it was. And when they looked over, they saw nothing, and they kind of just assumed that, I don't know, man, maybe it was a squirrel in the trees making that rustling sound. Maybe it was just like, I don't know, a branch falling or just something natural that really wasn't a threat at all. And so they go back to their conversation. They're sitting on the swings, and that's when they hear, once again, this rustling sound coming from the forest. And this is when they start to, look over again, because first time, maybe it's just a squirrel. I mean, maybe it still was just a squirrel, but if it was a tree branch falling, the second time, I don't know, it just caught their attention because it definitely sounded like something was kind of moving. And they didn't immediately think that, oh, it's something like scary or something they should be afraid of, but they just, it caught their attention enough that they stopped talking to kind of look over. And while they didn't go over and necessarily investigate right away, they were kind of like, huh, I wonder what that was. And, Benson looks over at George and is like, do you think that's a squirrel or something? And George is like, I don't know, man. It's probably nothing, though. And as George was saying it's probably nothing, this time they heard a even bigger, crash. And this time it was very clear that there was, something moving around back there. And Benson's like, should we go investigate? And George is like, I don't know, man. If that's like a bear or something, maybe investigating is not the best idea. And Benson, the subscriber, is like, oh, come on, man. Let's just go in and see what it is. And by the way, Benson put when he was writing up the story, and if you want to send me stories like the stories I've been telling, Instagram's in the description. Go follow me there, even if you're not going to send me stories, because I like followers or whatever. But, Benson, when he was writing this up to me, he added a little note saying, in general, do not do this. If you hear rustling or any kind of potentially dangerous noise, do not do what every main character in a horror, actually no, what every character that's assumed to be game ended in a horror movie does is oh, let's go investigate the attic. Let's go investigate the basement. Also, let's split up and tell no one what we're doing. Yeah, at least they didn't split up, right? But anyways, George eventually decided to go along with Benson, and they started to walk at least close to the edge of the woods. They weren't going to sprint in there trying to figure it out, but they wanted to get at least close enough to the woods to figure out what was making this noise. So when Benson and George got closer to the edge of the woods, they heard it again, and then they kind of saw that, because, you can kind of hear where something is coming from. They looked at kind of a cluster of trees that was somewhat close to them, but also a little bit reserved into the forest. And they heard another, another branch crack, kind of sounding like something was, moving, almost intentionally moving. And, Benson, he doesn't yell out, but he says pretty loudly, he's like, George, look, over there. I think that's where the noise is coming from. So they both look over to this cluster of trees. And this is where the thing that, is kind of crazy happens. It all gets explained later on. This is going to sound like some, I don't know, some scientific, some sci-fi story that's made up. But it all makes sense in just a second. Don't worry. Because when they look over to that cluster of trees, what they see completely shocks them. They see they see a bit of a shape behind the trees, and they're kind of confused what it is. And as they're looking at the cluster of trees, they see this big kind of Freddy Fazbear head kind of pop out and just stare at them. And at this point, right, they're both standing there completely in shock because they know what, Five Nights at Freddy's is. They've played the game. They've seen people play the game. And, they've heard internet rumors about it being an actual location and about how these things actually exist and how Scott Cawthon based this on reality or whatever. But they never did believe it. But once they saw this, they were both completely shocked. And Benson just looks at George, and they turn around and sprint, the fastest these two have ever ran. So when Benson and George sprint really far out of there, they're out of the park, and they're a good 5-minute walk away from the park at this point, they both kind of stop, they catch their breath, and after about a minute of catching their breath, they just look at each other, and Benson goes to George, he's like, man, I think I saw something, but I must have been seeing it incorrectly. And George just looks at Benson I mean, if you saw what I saw, then, we both weren't hallucinating, and if we were hallucinating, we probably weren't hallucinating the exact same thing. And Benson says, so you saw a Freddy head? And George is like, yeah, it makes no sense. He isn't real, but I saw what I saw. And Benson and George are just so rattled by this that they're, Benson and George are like, hey, man, or George is like, hey, let's just go back, let's go to bed, lock our doors at night, and let's just talk about this tomorrow. Because it was getting pretty late, it was getting dark, and they were pretty sure that their parents wanted them back home anyways. So the next day rolls around, and oh, by the way, they don't tell their parents because, like, oh, I saw a video game creature in the park. If his parents heard that, or any of their parents heard that, they'd probably be like, all right, our kid is not sleeping enough, or like, all right, this kid needs some help, bro. Like, he saw a video game creature in the park. Something's probably up. But anyways, right, the next day rolls around at school, and, they're sitting at, like, a lunch table, and it's Benson, George, and some other kids from the neighborhood. And this one kid from the neighborhood, we're just going to call Ben, because he doesn't really, come into play that much often, or after this point. Or at least I don't need to use his name. So we're calling him Ben, because that's the name I give to everyone. He's sitting at the table, and he's like, I saw something really weird yesterday. And at this point, right, Benson and George look at each other, and then they look at Ben, and they're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, go on. Because they don't want to say that they saw, like, a video game character at the park, because that would be ridiculous. But they look at him, and, Ben goes on to say, I was at the park, and I was just there by myself, and this is really weird, but I don't know how to say it, but, I heard something coming from the woods, and Benson and George just look at him. And then Benson goes, did you see a Freddy Fazbear head by any chance? And Ben's eyes just go super wide. He's like, yes, like, I didn't think anyone would believe me. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, did you see him too? And he's like, yeah. Benson, George and I, we're at the park, and we heard something, and we didn't believe what we saw, but we both saw it, so it had to be true. And Benson, George, and, Ben and the other kids at the table, because, like, one or two other kids had a similar experience since they all live in the same neighborhood, and this was a very popular park, they all came together, and they're like, all right, let's think about this logically. There is most likely not actually a real Freddy Fazbear. Like, we're just going to assume that he's not actually real. And by the way, comment Freddy down below right now. I will be hearting a bunch of random people who comment that. It just shows to me that you made it this far into the video, and I really do appreciate it. Anyways, though, they all sit at the table, and they're like, all right, reasonably, he's not real. However, we all saw the same thing, so we definitely saw something. So they sat down there, and they decided to concoct up a plan to investigate the situation and try and lure this, like, Freddy or whoever this is out of the woods and to actually figure out what is going on. So they wait till the end of school, and then after school, they all kind of, like, meet up a little bit outside the park, but also out of the view of the park. So nobody in the park or in the woods, whoever that might be, maybe it's, a person or an animatronic, who even knows at this point, could see them meeting up. So they meet up, and they're like, all right, who's going to be bait again? And Benson says, all right, I'll be the bait. And George decides to stay on the other team. And the only reason we have both perspectives on this is that Benson and George, Benson, the subscriber, submitted the story, but George gave him the account from, what he couldn't see. But anyways, right, the plan is Benson is going to go into the park. And he's going to see if, like, anything, like, because maybe, like, people being there would trigger whoever is in there to kind of make noise and try and come out. However, the other team, which is basically everyone else at the lunch table, so that means George, Ben, and the other kids who were there, are going to be kind of secretly not in sight, but they're going to be, like, sneaking up a little bit into the forest. Some of them are going to be, like, perched outside of the park. Essentially, right, they're going to stay hidden incognito while trying to figure out, who is behind all of this. The idea is that Benson will lure them out, or at least, have their attention on Benson, and then the other kids will be able to get in an ideal position to see who is actually behind this. So Benson is sitting on the swings. He's the bait, by the way. And he's sitting on the swings, and he hears a crack, and he's starting to get a little bit nervous, because, like, hey, man, being the bait is not always the greatest role in these types of things. So Benson is sitting there, and he hears another crack, and in the corner of his eye, he looks over to see, like, he kind of, like, tries to visualize, like, where he saw, the Freddy guy before, and he kind of looks over there, and since he can't really look, like, with his whole head, or can't turn his entire head without blowing his cover, or making it look like he's trying to bait him, right, he only kind of, like, slowly shifts his eyes over, and he looks at that patch of forest, and sure enough, it's blurry, but he can see the outline of kind of like a, the Freddy head, once again, peeping out. And he just continues to sit there as if he doesn't notice, to try and like give the other people time to figure out who's actually behind this. And, the guy, or at least there's more noise coming from that side of the woods. The assumption is that the guy in the Freddy, or if it actually is Freddy, spoiler, it's not, but the guy in the Freddy suit, whatever, is trying to like get his attention. So, Benson is sitting there on the swings. He's hearing more noise coming from that section. And at some point, right, he's going to eventually turn and look. However, Benson is also constantly looking at this area that's kind of far away. It's out of the view of the forest, but it's in view of Benson sitting on the swing. And he looks there and he sees George. George is not the one sitting on the swing, but George is the one who did part of the investigation. And George is giving him the thumbs up signal. By the way, one thing that they added was when the investigation team had gotten what they needed, they were to give the thumbs up so that Benson could, walk away from the swing set and know when he's basically done with his part of the deal. So Benson gets up, he gets off the swings, and he walks out of the park. And they all meet up again. And Benson's like, all right, so like, what did you guys find? And George and the others told their findings. George goes on to say, while you were distracting whoever was behind there, Benson, we were able to get around and look into the forest at all these different angles without being detected. And sure enough, we all saw what we saw before, a Freddy head. However, the rest of the body was a human body. And one of us was able to get closer, points to Ben, right? And he's like, one of us was able to get closer and confirm who it was. George points to Ben, and Ben kind of stands up. He's like, I was able to get close enough, and I recognized the outfit. And he said the name of who wore the outfit at school that day. And they all knew who this was. This was a kid in one grade above them who is notorious for bullying kids, and especially kids that were younger than him. They all knew who it was at this point, and they realized that the school bully bought this like Freddy Fazbear costume, or at least the head part, and knew that everyone, especially the kids in the grade below him, which were them, really enjoyed the park. So he would wait out after school and scare anyone who came. Ben, George, and Benson and the other kids did eventually get revenge on this bully, but I'm going to save that for another part. I don't normally like doing the part 1 and part 2 like on TikTok. That's very annoying. However, I don't want to make these videos too long, and also I can't make them too long because of my own software restrictions. But anyways, make sure to subscribe to see the part 2. Leave a like on the video, and then click one of the 4 videos on screen right now / watch another video to support the channel. Peace. Today we got the story of this kid who's being a real spoiled brat, so the subscriber decides to scare him into believing that Freddy Fazbear is real as a form of getting him back, and it's pretty funny. Leave a like in the video to claim your free nothing, and let's call the subscriber Clayton. So anyways, there's this spoiled kid in Clayton's class, and this kid is really just a brat, and for the rest of this video, I'm just gonna call him Spoiled Kid, because like, if you guys watched last video, I had 2 names, and I kept mixing them up, and I'm so sorry about that. My brain is just too small. But anyways, right, so one of these days, Clayton and everyone else in his class gets an invitation to the spoiled kid's birthday party, and you might be thinking, oh, this is like kind of a nice invitation, but no, in fact, it was just his mom sending out the invitations, and the spoiled kid was really just trying to present farm. He was just trying to get as many presents as possible. As on the invitation, it says, please bring a present. And anyways, right, so, Clayton shows up, and Clayton is determined that he is going to have, even though this kid is kind of a jerk, he's going to have the best time possible at this party, because, hey, man, look, there's free cake, there's, like, arcade games, like, dude, he's going to have a good time, man. Nothing's going to stop him. However, the spoiled kid eventually does something pretty bad that, I mean, you'll see in a second. So anyways, right, Clayton gets there, and all the other classmates are there, and so is the spoiled kid, and they go around playing some, like, some arcade games or whatever, and because it's the kid's birthday, right, the spoiled kid gets like extra tickets, which that's totally fine. It's his birthday. That's pretty normal. But when things start getting bad is when they go to the opening presents segment of the birthday party. So anyways, right, the way that this was going to be done was, the kids, they all, like, had their presents with them. The parents were holding on to the presents, but eventually, right, all the parents would hand the presents over to the kids, and the kids would go up and individually hand them over to the spoiled kid, and the spoiled kid would open them. And, in theory, he would say thank you and be very gracious for anyone giving him gifts on his birthday, but you already know that this kid is gonna be a massive jerk here. So anyways, right, it's eventually time to, like, you know, give presents and open them. And yeah, sure enough, right, so let's just call this kid Ben. He was friends with Clayton, and he was also in the class, so he was invited to the birthday party. And Ben's mom hands Ben, you know, his present, and, you know, Ben walks up to the spoiled kid with his present, hands the spoiled kid his present, and awaits, like, a reaction, right? So the spoiled kid looks at the present, like, before the wrapping paper, starts to open it up, unwraps the entire thing, looks at it, and he doesn't even, like, have no reaction, bro. The spoiled kid, bro, he frowns. He doesn't even have no reaction. Like, maybe you're not gonna burst into, like, I don't know, happy dances or something when you get a present you don't totally want. But at least maybe, you know, force a bit of a smile, look at them, say, thank you, I appreciate it. Like, because, bro, people don't know exactly what you want. Like, it's just a matter that, it's just the fact that they got you something. It's just like, it's the thought that counts. But bro, when the spoiled kid saw what he got, like, from Ben, he looks at Ben and he's like, really? Did you not even look at the list of things I wanted? This was definitely not on the list my mom gave out. And Ben is like, oh, like, the stuff on your list was just like, you know, it was pretty expensive. We couldn't get it. And the spoiled kid is like, really? You couldn't afford that stuff? Wow. You are broke. Next. And he literally just, like, looks, like, to the next person in line as if, oh my god, Ben had failed him by giving him such, like, a poor present or whatever, something like that. At this point, Clayton's like, hey, bro, like, that's not cool. Like, you don't have to like the present, but, like, you know, the thing is, right, you know, you don't even have to pretend to like it. You can just be like, oh, like, appreciate it. Like, even if you're not, like, super enthusiastic, at least don't, like, frown and be like, yo, you're too poor to get me a present I want, and, like, try and humiliate him in front of everyone. Like, that obviously isn't cool. So eventually, right, you know, Clayton goes up to him, and he's like, uh-oh, like, I also did not get something from this kid's wish list or whatever. Like, he's definitely gonna come down for me. Because this kid had actually given a few, like, genuinely happy reactions, but that's only when people got him stuff that was on his, like, super expensive wish list, like $100 Lego set, or, like, something very expensive like that. And some kids had actually got ahead and done that because their parents, I don't know, were just balling or something. I know I definitely would not be doing that if I was one of the parents. If I went to a birthday party and the kid said, yeah, I want this $200 Lego set, bro, I'd get them the $10 Lego set. That's jokes. I'm not doing that. But anyways, right, eventually Clayton walks up to the spoiled kid and he's like, aha, here's my present. The spoiled kid looks at the present and is like, this is not in the shape of anything on my wish list. And Clayton's like, So anyways, right, you know, the spoiled kid opens the present and, you know, it just looks so disappointed. And it's just like, Clayton, it's just the best you could do. At this point, Clayton's, like, actually offended. He's like, yes, like, you're welcome, haha. And spoiled kid is like, whatever, man, like, okay. And just, like, literally, like, not even joking, he throws the present, like, he throws the present to the side. Like, man doesn't even, like, no appreciation. Even if he doesn't like the present or is, like, gonna return it or throw it away afterwards, you didn't have to throw it on the floor. You didn't have to show your disrespect up front. So anyways, right, this continues on, and, you know, the spoiled kid reacts positively to some more presents, but he also kind of acts like a jerk for some other presents. So eventually, right, you know, Clayton finds the other kids and, you know, or at least the other ones that he remembers that, like, you know, the spoiled kid was extra mean to, extra rude to for no good reason. And he goes and finds them. He's like, hey, like, I don't know, I think this kid was kind of out of pocket for that. And all the other kids kind of agreed that, you know, even though it was the spoiled kid's, like, birthday party and it was his birthday, you still can't, like, react like that when you're talking about presents or whatever. So, you know, they decide to cook up a plan to kind of troll this kid. And instead of telling you the plan, I'm just going to tell you what they did. So anyways, right, you know, so they go and find the spoiled kid, and they're like, hey, man, like, you know, since it's your birthday, we wanted to, like, show you something really cool. And the spoiled kid was like, okay, but don't waste my time. And, you know, they were like, oh, no, it's really cool. It's really interesting. Like, I'm sure you'll find it fun. You'll find it very interesting, right? So, you know, they get to the spoiled kid and they're like, hey, let's, you know, like, come with us. We'll show you what we're talking about. So anyways, right, so it's Clayton, it's a couple other kids, and it's a spoiled kid, and they walk out and they go out of kind of like the place they were in. So they were inside of a mall because this was like some kind of like Chuck E. Cheese-esque type place because it's like they could go play like arcade games, they had pizza, cake, whatever. It's like a typical birthday place inside of a mall. So they're walking out of the mall and the spoiled kid is is like, where are you guys taking me? And Clayton's like, dude, don't worry about it. Like, that's part of the surprise. So anyways, right, they eventually walk all the way down to this, like, somewhat abandoned place. You know in the mall when, like, a shop closes, and it's like, you know, you can still see some of the signs and, like, decorations from the store, but it's, like, it's all empty, it's closed, it's locked down. But anyways, right, so they go to this place that's, like, closed, and Clayton looks at the spoiled kid and is like, hey, do you know, like, why this place closed down? And the spoiled kid is like, no, I don't know. And Clayton's like, oh, so there was this place used to be kind of a rip-off Chuck E. Cheese. It was called Freddy's Pizza Place. He's kind of looking at his friends like, what do I say here? What do I say? And the spoiled kid's like, okay, go on. And, you know, Clayton goes on to say, yeah, so it used to be called Freddy's Pizza Place. And there's these animatronics there. And they actually had to have the place shut down. And it wasn't because they weren't doing good business. In fact, it was doing great business here, right? But the problem was that there was a bit of a cover-up because this kid disappeared. And they said that the kid was, like, kidnapped or something, but the kid was not kidnapped. And the spoiled kid is like, oh, go on, I guess. And, you know, Clayton's like, they don't really know why, right? But the main animatronic, this is what I've been told, the main animatronic, the bear one, someone went inside the animatronic and, you know, this kid was, like, separated from the group. And, you know, the guy in the bear animatronic, you know, he apparently, like, you know, captured him. And, you know, neither the animatronic, the worker, or the kid were ever seen again. And to avoid some massive police investigation, you know, Freddy's Pizza Place is immediately shut down with, like, no notice or anything. And everyone there vacated. And the FBI are currently investigating the situation. And the spoiled kid's like, this happened in our hometown? Oh my God. At this point, right, you know, Clayton was like, okay, thank God this kid doesn't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is, because that was like an issue in the plan. If the kid knew about FNAF, the thing was over. And the spoiled kid's like, do you think they're still inside? By the way, these kids are in 3rd grade. This would never work on anyone above the age of, like, 7 or whatever. And so Clayton says, I don't know, like, we could definitely check inside. And the thing is, right, for some reason, while the place was closed down, the door was unlocked. Clayton and these kids, like, checked earlier, and they figured out that the door was actually unlocked, which is a win for them for what you're about to see. So the spoiled kid's like, dude, I don't want to do that. It's too scary. And Clayton's like, dude, we need to do it. And he's like, okay. To this day, Clayton still doesn't know why the spoiled kid just went along with it, but he did. So anyways, right, I'll give you a little heads up. One of the kids that was, you know, friends with Clayton and also got, you know, roasted by the spoiled kid during the present thing, he, you know, went to a local store, like one of the local, like, costume shops, bought a Freddy Fazbear mask, and was hiding inside of the abandoned store. So all of them walk in, and Clayton's like, says very loudly, all right, so I wonder if this place is actually abandoned. And that was, like, the cue to the kid to, like, jump out and scare them. So sure enough, right, you know, Clayton and the other guys kind of step behind, like, the spoiled kid, and the spoiled kid is, like, shaking at this point because he's like, he was just heard of this story of this, like, animatronic bear that, like, captured some kid. And sure enough, right, behind one of the counters, right, this kid kind of, like, stands up but doesn't stand up all the way, so it's, like, just a Fredbear mask that's, like, apparent, and goes like, oh. And the spoiled kid, bro, the shriek that he let out and ran away. This kid had never ran this fast before. This guy is not a track star, but this guy could definitely compete in the Olympics after the way he ran away from this. But anyways, right, Clayton and the other kids, they want to make sure that it's not suspicious, so they run away too, and they pretend to be scared as well. So they all run back, and the spoiled kid, by the time that Clayton and the other kids get back to the party, the spoiled kid is, like, in tears, and he's explaining to his mom that there's, like, some evil person or some Freddy like, there's some bear costume attacking me. And, you know, Clayton and the other kids are like, oh my God, like, we just explored a place and there's someone who, like, scared us or whatever. And eventually, right, you know, the parents actually do, like, tell the mall cop or whatever. And the mall cop, instead of, you know, thankfully he didn't check the security camera, which would have made sense. I think he just wasn't trying to, like, do his job. He's like, oh, I'll go investigate. Because if he actually did check the security camera, he would have seen it was just, like, Clayton and his friends. But yeah, they never got caught, and it was definitely, and the spoiled kid got pretty trolled. Click on the video on screen right now. I know you'll enjoy it. Just click it. Do it. Today we got a story time of a Minecraft kid who thinks SCP-096 is out to get him. Leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing, subscribe, and let's get right into it. So we're going to call the subscriber who sent in today's story, we're going to call him Ryan. Anyways, this all happened on one Friday night. Ryan was playing some Minecraft as he usually did. And he was playing some doubles in Minecraft or whatever, and he was just queuing with random people. It also just happened to be kind of like a rainy and stormy night out, and it was getting dark kind of early. It was that time of the year, and kind of the atmosphere was just a little bit spooky. But anyways, right, Ryan was playing some Minecraft doubles, and he was just queuing with random people who wanted to play with him. And, normally, right, people would sometimes just quit immediately. Some people would, like, not be very good. Some people would talk to him and be nice. But then there was this one guy who queued with him. And there was just something strange about his username. And, Ryan doesn't exactly remember his username, but he just remembers that something about, this guy's username just made him feel a little uneasy. And it was like when Ryan was sitting in the generator getting resources. If you don't know, in Bed Wars, right, you try and protect your bed, and you also get, like, gold and iron and stuff to, like, you can sit in your bed to get gold and iron, and, like, you get resources to get blocks or whatever. Kind of irrelevant to the story. But when, like, Ryan was sitting there getting resources to build a protection for his bed, this player that queued with him would just be, like, staring at him. His character would, like, just be staring at his character. It was just very weird. It was just very strange. It was just a little bit creepy. And anyways, right, after the game, Ryan and this guy actually won. No one else in the party or no one else playing that round of Bed Wars was very good. And Ryan was pretty good, and the guy he was playing with was actually surprisingly decent for, a random person he queued with who was acting kind of strange. Like, he was surprisingly pretty good at the game. And anyways, right before Ryan was about to hop into another Bed Wars queue to play again with another random person, he received a party request from this guy. And Ryan was thinking to himself, all right, like, that's, it's a little strange. This guy's a little weird, but he's also pretty good. Like, I would like to win some more games. If you don't know, in this Minecraft mode, if you party with someone, that basically means that you can play with them or on the same team as them. And anyways, right, so Ryan, he accepted the party request because he's thinking to himself, all right, like, why not? And anyways, right, so Ryan was about to go, and he asked, like, oh, do you want to play another game? Because in the party, you can, like, chat with each other. He's like, oh, do you want to play a game? Like, we make a pretty good team, haha. And the guy who he teams with doesn't respond right away. And Ryan's just a little bit weirded out by that. He's like, okay, this is a little bit strange. I don't understand. And then he gets a message in the party chat from the other guy, and it says, do you want to know the truth? And at this point, right, Ryan was feeling a little freaked out. He was feeling a little weirded out. He was a little uncomfortable with what was going on, but at the same time, right, he was just kind of like randomly playing Minecraft on a Friday night just because he was kind of bored. And this definitely felt like this would, either scare him, maybe, but it would most definitely cure his boredom. So we responded, yeah, sure, like, what's up? So after a second of waiting, the guy that, Ryan had queued with responded, do you know the legend of SCP-096? At this point, right, Ryan was, like, somewhat, like, into, like, he was on the internet. He wasn't, like, not on the internet at this point. And the thing is, though, right, Ryan just didn't know anything about, like, creepypastas and, like, and anything like that. He didn't know about, like, internet, like, horror stories or whatever. So he had no idea about anything about, like, SCP Foundation or any of the other SCPs. So he responded, no, I don't know what that is. So Ryan, responds, no, he doesn't know what that is. And, after a second of waiting, right, he finally gets the first message saying, message me on Discord. And then the random guy that Ryan queues with gives him his Discord as well as his Discord, like, number, whatever, however you add people on Discord. By the way, I have a Discord server. You should join it in the description. Anyways, right. So he adds him on Discord, and Ryan is really interested at this point because he's like, I'm no longer bored, to say the least. Like, he's also aware of, like, stranger danger, and people on the internet are probably weirdos, so be careful. But at the same time, man, like, he wants something interesting in his life, dude. He wants something interesting happening, and this is the definition of something interesting. So anyways, after, a minute or two, Ryan eventually gets the ad back, and the guy starts typing. He's like, so, do you really want to know about the legend of SCP-096? And sure enough, Ryan is like, yeah, like, what is it? I don't know what that is. And the guy says, all right, let me give you a little bit of a backstory. And by the way, this backstory or this explanation of SCP-096 will not be exactly, like, whatever the relevant lore is, because this guy wanted to, like, alter, like, the internet legend a little bit just to scare Ryan a little bit more. So don't eviscerate me in the comment section. I'm just reading what I've been told over DM. By the way, if you want to submit a story, Instagram is in the description. That's how you submit them. Yeah. So this guy starts to explain over Discord to Ryan that SCP-096 is a monster that was captured by a special unit of the government, also known as, the SCP Foundation. And he said the only reason that he knows about this happening is because there was a leak of this on, the dark web or the dark internet. Basically, if you ever want to spook someone, just say, ooh, darknet, ooh, the deep web, and everyone's going to be like, ah! Even though it's mostly just, databases and files. But whatever, right? He's like, there's a leak on the dark web. And I was one of the few that was able to see it. And apparently, right, the government is housing this creature. And along with the leak, there's an image. So he drops an image in chat, and it looks something along the lines of this. Obviously, he chooses an image that's a little bit less video gamey, but anyways, right, he puts the image in chat. He's like, the legend is, right, this creature, anyone who sees this creature's face, the creature will start to scream and wallow or whatever, but then after about a minute or two of screaming, it'll just go on a destructive rampage, and he will destroy anyone who sees his face. And also, he makes this terrible high-pitched scream, while he's doing it. At this point, right, Ryan's starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable because, he has this sense that, this is, all fake or whatever. Because, I think Ryan's, I'm going to make the assumption he's, 12 or 13 at this point. So he has a feeling this is all fake, right? But at the same time, right, it's still a little odd. It's still a little bit creepy. And the guy that Ryan messages goes on to say, yeah, by the way, I forgot to let you know one thing. And Ryan's like, oh, what's that one thing? He said, anyone who sees his face at SCP-096 will be after. And Ryan's like, oh, okay, why did you have to specify that? You already said it. And the guy says, oh, yeah, by the way, it doesn't have to be his face in person. It can simply be a photo of his face. And at this point, right, Ryan is starting to, even though he doesn't totally believe this, he's starting to feel this kind of, feeling of, oh, my God. And Ryan starts typing, and he's like, is the image you showed me, is that a real image? Real quick, comment SCP down below in the comment section so I can see who made it this far into the video. I'll be trying to heart as many comments as I can that comment SCP down below, but if you want a better chance of getting a heart, because I can't heart them all, comment it maybe 2 or 3 times. There's a better chance I'll see it and a better chance you'll get a heart. Even if you don't get a heart, just know I really do appreciate you watching. But anyways, right, so Ryan types in the Discord chat, is this image a real image of him? Because he's starting to realize that if what this guy is saying is true, which he's like, oh, I don't believe it, but if, right, he kind of does believe it at this point, but if what this guy is saying is true, he just showed him an image, right, of SCP-096. This is basically a death sentence. And the guy Ryan was talking to on Discord responds, yes, ... Your time is limited. And at this point, Ryan's he's like, wait a minute. Why isn't your time limited? If you had this photo on your desktop and you sent it to me, that definitely means that you saw this image. So Ryan thought oh, I got him, ha ha ha, or whatever. And the guy responds, oh, you don't understand. I've never actually seen this image. I downloaded software that scrambles every picture of this image so that I will never actually see it. And after the guy says this, Ryan just has this weird sinking feeling. He still doesn't totally believe it, but the story was, detailed and scary enough that, he was just feeling it. And at this point, Ryan, instead of, engaging anymore with this guy on Discord, he simply just unadds the guy in Discord, blocks him, logs on the Hypixel, removes the guy from his friends list, gets out of the party with him, just tries to disconnect from this guy, deletes the chat on Discord, just tries to forget about everything that, was happening. And for a while, right, Ryan was he just forgot about, the whole SCP-096 incident, right? He just didn't even think about it, because he was just, back on Bed Wars, just queuing random people, and, he didn't queue this guy again for, the rest of the night, so that's not what happens. However, right, if you do remember when the guy was explaining what happens, when the SCP guy goes on, a destructive rampage, he makes this, wailing sound, this screeching, screaming, wailing sound. And if you guys don't know, if you live with foxes, foxes will make this really loud screeching wailing sound late at night. And I know this because where I live, there's a ton of like foxes that roam around at night, and they make this like screaming sound. It actually was really scary the first time I heard it. And the thing is, right, where Ryan lived, there hadn't been foxes that lived there for years. So like Ryan, like, he does remember in retrospect that that happened many years ago, but it took him a while to remember that. But anyways, in the moment, he was just sitting there playing some Bed Wars, playing some Minecraft, right? Just like chilling, having a pretty good time. And he's sitting there and he's mid-game. He's just queued with some random guy. And he hears this screeching sound coming from outside. And the thing is, right, it's the sound of the foxes. However, he's not thinking about foxes. He's thinking about what this random guy on Discord told him about what the SCP-096 does when he's on his, like, destructive rampage and when he's coming for you. And it sounded exactly like that. And because of this, like, coincidence, right, this guy, like, was obviously going around trying to scare people, and there's not a chance he could have known that, like, this guy lived with foxes. It was just a really terrible coincidence, right? But the fact that, like, after seeing the image, and he hears the exact sound, the scary sound that he was told he was going to hear, Ryan just, like, freezes in his chair. And his heart starts racing so fast. And he just, like, gets out of his chair, goes to his door, slams it shut, locks it. And his mom is just, like, in the other room and is like, Ryan, is everything okay? And he's like, yep, everything's good. I'm good. And legitimately for the rest of the night, like, he didn't go to bed till, like, 5 in the morning when he just, like, could not stay up any later, right? He stayed in his room, lights on. He just sat up in his bed. He didn't even, like, lie down in his bed. He sat, like, straight up vertically in his bed for the entire night until he fell asleep forcefully at, like, 5 a.m. And when he woke up, he was, like, woke up in a panic because he was sure that, like, the SCP-096 was about to be right above him, right? And honestly, for the next couple weeks, like, Ryan was, like, terrified. After about 2 weeks, Ryan decided to face his fears and look online to see if there was any information about SCP-096, and that's when he realized the whole thing is like an internet joke or an internet hoax or whatever, and that yes, no, SCP-096 is not out to get him. Subscribe if you haven't already, drop a like on the video, and then go watch one of the 4 videos on screen right now, or go watch an old video. Either way, you'll support the channel. Thank you. Today we got a story time of a Minecraft kid who tries to impress the new girl in class with the fact that he has aliens in his basement. I don't know, man. But anyways, he gets exposed in front of everyone, and it's pretty hilarious. So sit back, relax, leave a like on the video to claim your free nothing, subscribe to the channel, and let's just get right into it. So the subscriber sent in today's story. We're going to call him Brian. I got the name from the comment section down below, so leave a comment of any names you want me to use. Anyways, right, so Brian was telling me about, you know, this new girl who came into class, and we're going to call her Claire. So normally, look, there's always, like, new kids moving in, but it's still a rare enough occasion that it's, like, it's a big deal, especially since Claire didn't come at the beginning of the year. She came, like, 2 months into the fall, I guess, semester or trimester. I don't know what section, like, or what they're on, right? But they're in 5th grade. Just all the context you need. So anyways, right, on the first day, the teacher says, all right, class, we have a new student. I'd like you to, you know, meet Claire. Claire, is there anything, you know, you'd like to, like, say, or, like, you want to introduce yourself? She's like, yeah, hi, guys, my name's Claire. I'm from insert, you know, originally from insert place very far away. I recently moved here, and, you know, I'm starting here in the school system. Everyone's like, hi, Claire, you know, nice to meet you, whatever. So pretty standard. Claire goes to sit down, and there's also another kid in this class, and we're going to call him Benny. Let's just call him Benny, right? And, you know, while he did play a lot of Minecraft, he was mostly known as, like, the Minecraft kid because of the same creeper shirt he wore every day. I mean, dude, maybe this kid was like Einstein and had, like, you know, 6 pairs of the same shirt and, like, pants to wear every day. But, dude, I'm just going to make the assumption that, you know, man was not running the washing machine every single night. He just kind of came in the same shirt, maybe washed it once a month when it started to, like, crystallize from the sweat and gamer juice. But whatever, man. Benny, he was an interesting kid. And it wasn't just the sweat crystallized gamer t-shirt he wore every single day. He had quite the personality as well. But I'm going to leave that to the story. Anyways, right, so they were in class. You know, Claire sits down. Benny, Brian, and all the other students were sitting there listening to the teacher go on about something. And finally, right, class ends, and it's lunchtime. And so Brian goes over to sit with his friends, and, he's kind of friends with, like, a mix of, like, girls and guys, which I always think is pretty cool. Like, personally, out of my 5 best friends, 2 of them are girls, so I got, like, a 40% best friend girl to guy split. I totally love it, dude. Like, being friends with, like, a different gender, you just get a different experience, and it's really cool. Anyways, though, Brian was friends with, like, girls and guys. So Claire, trying to be outgoing, get to know people, she sat down with this group of people, and she's like, hey, my name's Claire, like, I mean, you probably know that from me being introduced earlier, but my dad just changed jobs, pretty suddenly, and I'm here now, and I just got enrolled in the system, like, if you want to tell me about you guys or anything like that. So they start going around. Brian explains, his friends explain who they are, they introduce themselves, and then the kid, Benny, just, like, was sitting at a different table, gets up with his food, comes over and sits down, which, at first kind of just seems like, he's trying to be cool. He's doing a nice thing, trying to make the new person feel good, I don't know, give them some company. That's a pretty cool thing. Except the way he executes it's a little strange. He sits down, he's like, hi, my name is Benny. Do you want to hear about a secret of mine? And bro, Brian and the other people at the table just look at each other like, oh, dude, you can't be serious, dude. This guy is already on his stuff already. Dude, it's been like a couple hours since she got here. At least make her pretend like we're normal, bro. Stop, please, bro. But sure enough, right? Benny's like, do you want to hear my secret? And Claire's just like, okay. And he's like, you're totally not going to believe this, but there are actually aliens in my basement. And Claire's just like, bruh. In her head, she's like, bruh. But then she's like, oh, to be polite. Really? And Brian looks at Benny. He's like, dude, what are you talking about? And Benny gives him this look like, bro, stop. Like, don't blow my cover. He's like, oh, yeah, they're aliens in my basement. I was checking this morning, and I found some aliens down there. Pretty crazy. And bro, Brian and all the other people at the table were just looking at him with, like, wide mouths, just like, what is this kid on? And Claire, who's trying to be polite, part of her thinks, like, oh, maybe this kid's trying to prank me or something, or maybe he's just full of it. Well, option 2 is probably the one. But she's like, oh, isn't that nice? And then Benny, instead of just, like, leaving it there, is like, if I can prove I have aliens in my basement, will you go on a date with me? At this point, right, Brian and all the other kids are just like, bro, shut up. At this point, right, Claire just kind of sits there like, what is going on? And Brian says, all right, like, Benny, let's not ask these questions. That's very weird and strange. And Benny's like, I think you're just a hater who doesn't believe in the aliens. And Ben, you know what? Brian's like, yeah, actually, I don't believe in the aliens. And at this point, right, Benny's like, oh, I got to defend myself. He's like, you want to make a bet? You want to make a bet on the aliens? And Brian's like, I'll make a bet with you on if there's actually aliens in your basement. Sure thing, yeah. Benny's like, prepare to lose. How much money do you want to lose? And Brian's like, how much money do I want to win? Let's put $5 down. Look, this is 5th grade. You might not be thinking like $5, whatever, right? I mean, $5, you can get a pretty nice like Subway sandwich with that. But anyways, right, $5. It was a big deal back then too, even bigger than it might be now. So, Brian was like, all right, sure. Yeah, $5. And Benny's like, all right, fine, $5. And Claire's just sitting there like, bro, you got to be kidding me. And Brian's like, all right, well, let's see some proof. And Benny's like, all right, we'll be here tomorrow, and I'll come with some proof. And Brian's like, all right, well, we all at the table have to agree that it's actually proof. And Benny is like, you guys will be so shocked. There's no way you can prove otherwise, so I accept. And Brian's like, all right, bet. Quick $5. And in Brian's head, he's like, all right, quick $5. Got Claire out of this awkward situation. I'm just straight up winning today. There's no question about it. So Benny goes on to say, all right, guys, we'll just be here tomorrow at lunch, and I'll show you indisputable proof. Make sure to bring the $5. Brian's just like, all right, bro, I'll be here at lunch. Sure thing. And Benny's like, fine, see you then. And he gets up and leaves. And Brian immediately turns to Claire. He's like, I'm so sorry. He does not represent us, man. Like, we're all normal. I'm sorry he said that weird thing and then proceeded to ask you on a date. Like, that must have been super uncomfortable. And Claire was like, I mean, a little, but it was also kind of funny. And, you know, Brian's like, you don't have to sit here tomorrow. We won't take it personally because we know he's coming back. And Claire's like, nah, dude, what are you talking about? I want to see these alien photos. So Brian immediately knew, like, Claire was super fun. Like, she was going to be chill. She's going to fit in just fine. And Brian's like, all right, like, just be prepared. He probably is going to have something up his sleeve, and let's just hope it's not directed at you again. And she's like, all right, I could take it. Like, to see the the quote-unquote alien photos, I'll do anything to see that. So anyways, right, the next day rolls around. Real quick, if you made it this far into the video, comment alien down below. I'm going to try and drop some hearts on these comments to say that I appreciate you guys watching, because if you watch videos like more than halfway through, it really helps me out. And if you don't get a heart, I'm just really busy, and I still appreciate you either way. Anyways, right, next day rolls around. And Brian and his friends, as soon as they get out of class, like, they're waiting in class with like 5 minutes left on the clock, and they just can't wait, man, because they're just excited to see what Benny brings in and how it's going to be. Like, he's going to get clowned on so bad for bringing in something that is going to prove that there's aliens in his basement, right? Yeah, I mean, hey, man, we all know that's going to be cap. But anyways, you know, the bell rings and Brian's like, let's go, boys. And all of Brian's friends come up and, like, they all start walking over. And, you know, Brian goes up to Claire and he's like, are you ready? And she's like, dude, I'm so ready for this. So they go over to the table, right? They sit down and they're waiting for Benny. And, dude, Benny doesn't show for like 5 minutes, and they only have like 30 minutes to get lunch. Bro, I'm not sure if it was just me, but for some reason, my middle school, my high school, they never gave you enough time to eat. I'm trying to digest. I'm not trying to feel sick after lunch because I get like 3 minutes to pummel down my food. Bro, chill out. I'll have plenty of time to study, whatever, right? So they're sitting there, and they're just like, where's the kid? Is he not going to show up? Is he just not going to eat? Like, what's the deal here? Anyways, right, so they're sitting there, and they're waiting, and eventually, Benny, like, you know, they see Benny, and they're like, oh my God, finally, the kid's here. So Benny sits down, and Benny just has this smile on his face. And for a second, Brian's like, all right, well, I know for a fact that there's no aliens in his basement, but what if he is like proof that I can't dispute? Even if it's not real, like, what if I can't dispute it? I really don't want to give this guy $5. Because you know, he just said I had to convince him, like, that, you know, or I can't prove it wrong. So Brian was a little nervous for a second, and Benny's like, all right, I'm glad you've all gathered around. Finally, you guys will see the indisputable proof that there are aliens in my basement. And I shall receive $5 from Brian and a date from Claire. And Brian's like, hey, yo, that was not part of the deal. And Claire's like, all right, that's fine. And Brian kind of was taken aback for a second because he's like, in his head, he's like, dude, I know you don't want to go out on a date with this kid. And I know you're just putting it in because it's like funny and you think that there's no chance. But what if he has good Photoshop skills? You don't know this. But anyways, right? Benny's like, all right. Pulls out his phone. He's like, look at this and weep, or get super scared, because that's how I'd react to aliens personally. And sure enough, like, they take the phone and they all look at it. And as they're all looking at the photo, Brian, Claire, and his friends all burst out laughing. And right, Benny's taken aback. He's like, why are you laughing? And Brian, trying to like get his words out in between his wheezes, is like, bro, did you not think any of us ever saw the movie Alien before? Alien was a pretty popular, like, alien movie. And Benny just looks so embarrassed at this moment because, like, bro really came into lunch with his definitive proof being a screenshot from the Alien movie trailer. That was his definitive proof. I'm not even kidding. And so Benny gets up all embarrassed and, like, grabs his phone and gets up and walks away from the table. And Claire, like, turns to Brian and is like, dude, you're not going to get your $5 because Benny didn't give him the $5. And they're assuming that at this point he's too mad to. And Brian's just like, bro, at this point, like, I already won. This is my victory. This is my prize right here. This moment is my celebration. Subscribe if you haven't already. Drop a like in the video, and then if you want to support the channel, click on one of the 4 videos on screen or watch another one of my videos. Thank you. Peace.